was giving a school bun and milk. And when they accepted this proposition, with that came the birth of Ceylon biscuits. So essentially we had one customer with no marketing required, but with our excess capacity, we then entered the local market in 1968. In the 70s and 80s, Ceylon biscuits basically consolidated their position as a biscuit manufacturer, widened their scope of manufacturing. It was really, I'm going to focus from the 90s onwards because that was about the time I joined the company too, so I have a more hands-on experience. So in the early 90s, really, the role of the CMO was really about, the company would manufacture products and the expectations of the CMO were, you have to market it, differentiate it from the competition. Essentially, the medium used for communication was TV, radio, and press. And in the early 90s, a lot of press was actually used, even in categories like biscuit. Success was measured in terms of sales, and in our company at that time, we didn't really focus on market share. It was more inward-looking, As long as the company was growing, everyone was happy. And at that time, the trader would play a very important role in the decision-making of the product sold, and could easily sway a purchase decision from a consumer. Our company success really has revolved around 4 things, and that is innovation, quality, distribution, and marketing strategy. Right from the inception of our company, when it was founded in 1968, when we went into commercial sales, we came out with different products. And for example, I'm sure all of you are familiar with Hawaiian cookies or milk shortcake. These biscuits are over 40 years old in the market today. And not only in Sri Lanka, you get them all over the world. We're very proud. We're proud of that. Again, another brand that we launched in the 90s, early 90s, was Ritzbury. We came into the market where we had 2 very solid competitors, and there was really not much room for a third entrant. But we came, seeing there were only slabs in the market. We saw an opportunity to come up with different products. We came with coated biscuits, chocolate coated biscuits, which was our specialty as well, and branched out into many other products. To bring Ritzbury as a chocolate brand, and it's a market leader now, which many people don't realize, with a really wide array of products. And at that time, that was a focus. There's so much opportunity within the market itself to bring in new things. I want to talk a little bit about Manchi because that is what everyone is familiar. In the early 90s, we had a market share of about 27%. And our focus in the 90s and early 2000s was really how are we going to get to another level beyond being the second brand in biscuits. And while we were very creative and had a huge range of products, we knew that unless we focused on the 2 main products, lemon puff and cream crackers, we could not really make inroads into getting massive market share. And keeping with our innovative backdrop, we launched lemon puff, which was already in the market, but we did it on our terms. Different product, different look, and innovative marketing strategy, which was obviously very memorable because it worked. The Ativishishta campaign saw our sales just go up and up and up. Lemon puff was not enough. We needed to also have a handle on cream crackers, which the competition had over 80% market share at the time. It was a red pack. We also had a red pack. And again, we thought we need to differentiate ourselves. And that is exactly what we did. Cream crackers was a boring biscuit, essentially eaten when you were not feeling too great. And we wanted to give the message like, look, hey, you can eat a cream cracker anytime, and it tastes really good. You can eat it. We came up with this campaign, Super Kiane Nikang Neve. And with that, in 2002, Manchi actually assumed the market lead position in biscuits. One other product I'm going to talk about very quickly, and that is soy foods. Lanka soy, we bought over the company in the early 2000s. Soy market, again, a very boring, very static market. Lanka soy had a good name in the market. It was a market leader, even when we got it, but we couldn't see any growth in the whole category. And our CMO came up with the solution of differentiating the product. We had Lanka soy as a main soya entity, and it had different flavors. But then we took segments and marketed to niche requirements for consumers. So we had Chico soy, Malu soy, and veggie soy. And we actually thought by launching these three variants, it would actually eat into the Lanka soy market itself. But in reality, what happened was the entire market grew. The entire soya market grew by differentiating into this niche. Again, at this time, there's a lot of opportunity in the market to do so. The expectation 20 years, in the last 20 years or so, is of the company and the CMO and all the CEOs, where you create new products for the consumer. You make them happy. We have a very strong distribution network. We use that to get the product distributed all island. We increase our market share, and we build loyalty through our marketing strategies. So what has changed? Why is it different now? In the last few years, we see a lot of difference, actually. The CMO today is no longer just marketing a product. He is really responsible for the whole business part of it. He has to work in partnership and look at both the top line and the bottom line of the product. Today in the market, there is a multitude of very similar products from all over, not only from Sri Lanka, from all over the world. And you're really fighting for that consumer spend and attention. Purchase choice is also very different to what it used to be. People would go to a shop and ask for something. So the modern trade has been growing very rapidly, but even within the general trade and the modern trade today, the purchase choice of a consumer is really essentially made at point of sale today, especially in a lot of FMCG products. They might go out with the idea, okay, I need to buy a pack of biscuits, but when they get to the supermarket, there's a promotion on ice cream, or go even to an outlet, they see a big advertisement for chocolates. And when they decide to buy a biscuit, they actually end up buying something else. So the attention that there's so much out there, and communicating what you are putting out for the consumers is also a huge challenge today. It's no longer TV, press, and radio. There is so many medias to use from today. And you really have to understand how to use these diverse media options and really segment and concentrate on what you want to do. Again, I'm going to pick on two examples of two products we launched fairly recently. Again, I'm picking another a chocolate brand, Lbr Lbo. We became market leaders Ritsbury became market leaders in chocolate. However, a bulk of our product, more than 50% of our turnover came from products which are priced below 20 rupees. And let me tell you, to make money out of something that you're selling at 20 rupees is very, very difficult. And increasingly, market shares were growing, ranges were growing. We were investing in the brand and in equipment. And then we suddenly realized as a business, hey, look, our bottom line is just shrinking. Chocolate being a very luxury product, margins were really, really getting very hard. So we thought, okay, there is a niche top end. Let's reach out to them. And Lbr Lbo was born out of that. We wanted to match a chocolate that, could compete with any international brand. And we actually expected to really get the top end of the market, but in reality what happened is a lot more. And what we realized is consumers, and this is an indulgence product, And when it comes to your indulgence, you are willing to spend a little bit more. So we've really broad-based, again, that chocolate slab category with the introduction of Revelo, which saw the company's bottom line go up. The CMO is also a part of the company today, and the company is really a part of society today. It's very holistic, I think, the way people look at things. And another product we recently launched, coming really out of a need for the country, and the government was very interested in promoting rice. Biscuits are essentially made with wheat. So we took the challenge upon ourselves, and we launched Kome, which is a product made using 100% Sri Lankan rice. Apart from Kome, actually, there are other products that we have under the Manchi brand where we've substituted a large percentage of the wheat flour with rice where we can. So Kome was a product brought out with this whole national need. It has a large backward integration segment because we work directly with farmers, and the supply chain right down the line is a very, it affects the economy right down the line. It's a new product, it's innovative, keeping with our core strength with innovation and finding a niche in an already very cluttered marketplace. And then there is also another factor coming to play, the Z generation. My son is in this generation. His attention span is in milliseconds. Everything is really, really fast. How do we reach out to these people? Everything that surrounds them is digital. So as a company, we've had to evolve our marketing strategies. We have to look at it, and I have to confess, we are not very big in this area, but increasingly in time to come, we have to have a very large focus in this sort of digital communications. If you look at enterprise challenges today, unlike I told you earlier on that milk chocolate and Hawaiian cookies have been in the market for over 40 years. A lot of products that are put into the market today have a very, very short product life cycle. You'll be lucky if it's there for a few years. The marketplace is global today. You cannot be in your little niche. Even though you are marketing in Sri Lanka, there are influencers coming from all over the world. And also, you have an opportunity to be right around the world. And today, to be successful, you cannot be the little frog in the well. You have to be really out there. You have to understand that consumers are becoming very picky. And, they have niche needs. And how do large manufacturers cater to these individualistic needs? Innovation is very fast-paced. We put out products, 3 months down the line, someone else has copied the same thing, or tries to copy the same thing, I should say. Very difficult. So the minute you launch a product, you can't rest and say, okay, now at least for a couple of years, I can focus on this. You have to already focus on the next 3 products that you're going to launch down the line. And in order to meet all of the above, you have to have flexibility in your organization. Not only in the marketing division, but right down the supply chain and operations, management, everything. You have to be able to respond very fast, because if you don't, someone else is going to get there. How do we respond? How does the CMO respond to these things? The CMO has to be able to predict what is the next trend and prepare themselves for meeting that challenge. The brands, the market have to be international, but local. When you are launching products, you have to think of a much larger audience, but you have to tailor-make it to your specific market. And again, flexible. The key word here is you have to be flexible. So, an expectation of a CMO, I would say he has to be a soothsayer. You have to be able to see into the future. So what really do we expect of a CMO today in the context of what has changed in the last 20 years? You have to be able to predict consumer trends. You have to understand psychology of your consumers. You have to be a business leader. You have to be a partner in the business. You're not only really responsible for one division in the organization. There's a lot of gray areas, and it's a whole team that you work together as a team. You have to be a strategist. Innovate. I mean, innovate is a key in today's market because so many new things coming in. As I said, the new generations coming in, they want everything new, fast, all the time. You really need to be right out there in your innovation. And you have to understand digital media. You have to get on top of that. I was going to show a small clip of a Coke campaign, but I was told it was shown earlier in an earlier presentation. But that really encompasses the digital age, where even the printing on those Coke, I'm just assuming that a lot of you have seen that presentation, where you have these individual names on Coke bottles. While it might seem kind of a fun thing to do, down the supply chain and printing, doing those, that packaging is very complex. And it's only possible because of this digital age. And they're using digital media to get the message across. And so there's a lot happening today in the world of technology, which you have to be aware of. And as I mentioned earlier, businesses today are a part of society. And CMO has to be very conscious on the social responsibility aspects of what it does with the brand, and also the sustainability of the brand, of the company, and of the whole holistic operation. So to wrap up very quickly, today, I mean, what we would really expect of a CMO, apart from being a marketing professional, he has to be a psychologist. He has to understand people. He needs to be financially savvy. It's not only about advertising nice products anymore. Has to be in tune with technology. Has to be really with it. You have to be a really well-rounded personality today. Okay, thank you.
Share a Coke with your dad this Father's Day.
Let me tell you a little story about my dad.
He's really awesome.
Yes, I like that.
Thank you very much, Chair, for those thoughts, and really indeed extremely provoking in terms of defining what the role of the Chief Marketing Officer is going to be and how it's going to evolve. Ladies and gentlemen, please put in your comments and thoughts on 072-771-1585. Please keep the questions coming in. Once the session is over, we will have a Q&A session as well. So I'll now invite Graham to come and share his perspectives and give us more food for thought on the role of the CMO is going to evolve.
Hear me? Thanks, Sudhan. Thank you, Shia. I think it made it very easy for me to dovetail into my presentation, because been thinking very much on the same lines, and it makes the story just continue. Yeah, we've been talking about digital the whole morning, and I've just asked myself, when Lakshman asked me to do this, I asked myself, do you really know the meaning of digital? Honestly, I didn't. I knew a little about it, but I didn't really, what on earth is this? And I just asked myself and dug deep, and I just said to myself, I think it's connectivity, and I think that's what it's all about. And if there's a more potent force, a more powerful force that has changed the role of the marketing, the role of traditional marketer, the role of the CMO, I don't think there's anything more powerful and more potent than connectivity. It has changed, marketing is evolved. As a result of it, the consumer obviously is connected and is moving, the consumer is moving at a very, very high speed, and in order to keep abreast of the consumer, marketing organizations and obviously CMOs have to keep abreast. See, traditional marketing involved more so, it was content, a monologue, content directed, very well crafted content directed at the consumer, and the consumer really didn't have a chance to experience your product or service. He came up, and until the transaction was finished, he didn't really know too much about what was going on. Comes connectivity, and the consumer is talking about you, he's finding out about you, he's finding out about the competition, he's liking you, he's probably ripping you apart somewhere, even on social media, but he's coming to you informed, he's asking you a lot of questions, and you've got to answer the questions. So it's a dialogue, it's an argument, it's a debate, it's a dialogue. He's no more lonely. He's come in with a lot of support, he's connected, he's come in feeling very confident before he can actually go into that transaction. What does it then require for the marketer to respond to this shift? See, I'm not going to take total digital technical route. I think marketing as a still, as with brands, has a lot of fundamentals to the whole concept, and that's not going to change. It's terra firma as far as marketing is concerned. But nonetheless, I've seen a few challenges, 5 or 6 challenges around which the marketing function has to shape itself in order to circumvent this tremendous paradigm. Marketing guy get more influence in the C-suite, as we call it. 1, the use of data, big challenge. 2, driving innovation. 3, revenue and demand creation. Sounds very straightforward, no change. You may think, but I'll tell you why I think it should be there. Functional integration, fragmentation of communication channels, ethics and sustainability. To me, these are areas which really would be areas of challenge for the CMO in order for him to adapt this change paradigm. Let me go into data. We know it's prolific. It's not that we haven't used data before. Of course, we've used it. But there is a tremendous amount of data. How do we use it? How do we treat it? How do we analyze it? I mean, you're in the era of big data. We're talking companies having 80 to 100 terabytes of data, right? How much of it do you use, and what do you really need, right? We really need to start making use of this data to make meaningful comparisons and interpret patterns. We need to identify root causes and take corrective action. And we need to glean insights from this data in order to get into new products and services. Now, when I'm saying data, I'm talking about comparisons. See, data was used, and I think we were in an era of traditionally financial data, reporting financial data, commenting on financial data. But we've moved now into customer data, operations data, and data about our environment. Data is helping us shape the future. We are not reporting and commenting about data. We're using data to analyze. We're using data in the form of graphics. There are dashboards. Data is beaming at you all the time. Okay, there's a tremendous amount of data. That's how it's evolving. Okay. In terms of making meaningful comparisons, we were talking about signals, we're talking about noise, we're looking at trends here for sure. But we need to get into identifying trends, meanings of trends. What is the signal in this trend we're seeing? Can we eliminate the noise? We're looking at data not just because, for example, we're not just looking at a variance. We're not looking at how we are, but we're saying we're looking at more than that. How have we achieved budget? Have we not plus, minus? Yeah. But we're now going into root causes. Why? What's the process that led to this deviation, positively or negative? What have we done correct? What have we done wrong? What's the root cause? And what's corrective action that we're going to take? And corrective action now, with the speed things are moving, we have to identify and move into corrective action extremely fast. Expeditious response is the name of the game. And of course, data is going to be used to glean insights to deliver market-facing products. Number 2, driving innovation. Yeah, sounds very straightforward. Why do I say the CMO's role is different? I think the CMO is the cog in the wheel in the innovation process. It's a link between R&D and the organization, right? the CMO is basically the repository of the data. He has all the customer data that's gleaned. The CMO then becomes the innovation project owner. Right, he then becomes a project manager. There's a deadline looming over that project. He's also responsible for revenue and profit. He has to deliver that product at a particular time. Move in with R&D, talk to R&D, be the link between that and the organization. At AXO, just to give an example how this works, I mean, at AXO, you want a product, say, I'm looking for a washable paint. Yeah. I know that's what I want, that's what my insights require. I then get channeled into an NPD process. That particular parameter is fed into some robot somewhere, I think in Amsterdam. Yeah, it is in Amsterdam at the R&D center. That throws out a base, what we call a base formulation, right? And then we look to see whether there is any other experience in some other countries, right? To see, because obviously you don't want to utilize resources, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So you have automatically become a part of a project, you have become a process owner, right? You're not just responsible for brand equity and getting that product on the shelf and the communication. It's much, much more than that. When working with finance, on margins, on pricing, you're working with operations, okay? Operations is saying, I want an accurate forecast. My goodness, it's a forecast. What does a forecast mean? But we're looking at forecast accuracy because it goes back again to operational efficiencies. It goes back again to the operational efficiency of your organization, right? Eventually driving revenue through these NPDs. You're talking market share gain, you're talking NPD strategy, you're talking accountability for the revenue that you have to deliver in your budget, right? To add a little spice into it, I'm talking insights, and let me give you an example of color. Color is our life. We sell color and life. We sell, life is all about color. As you know, Dulux is the flagship paint brand in the country. Let me tell you how color, it's just not any color that comes out into the market, all the colors that you see. It comes out of a lot of insights, a lot of development. And if you look at some of our palettes, there's a thing called the color futures where you have a group of architects, engineers, color designers, painters, consumers, sitting together in a room in Europe, talking to people, deciding, talking about the mood of the people, the mood of the world, mood of the country, and then looking at the color palette, beginning, underpinned by what is called, we call it the color of the year, right? So here's a small thing on that.
Skirt lengths are up when the economy is down, and vice versa. It's well known that what happens in society influences our opinion about beauty. For a paint manufacturer like Lbr, it's very important to know in advance which colors people will like in the near future. Each year, Lbr's Aesthetic Center invites an international group of experts to come together and forecast color trends, otherwise known as the color future. One central idea is identified that connects those trends. For example, the central theme in 2004 was balance, reflecting the modern urban professional's need for relaxation and highlighted the prevalence of aqua blue. " 2005 was all about In 2006, the forces of nature like Hurricane Katrina sobered our mood as a whole, with a tendency towards restorative yellow and neutral tones. In contrast, the 2007 palette of intense urban colors, showcasing a masculine cool pink, reflected worldwide creativity and innovation. Globalization and China's rise to economic and Olympic superpower status pushed imperial yellow into the spotlight in 2008. "2009 was a pivotal year, with global economic turmoil forcing us to reassess our aspirations. Jade green perfectly captured this mood. As 2010 sailed into view, the effects of the credit crunch were visible. The need to reclaim control of our lives was symbolized by a clear light blue. The first rays of hope returned, and an appreciation of what we have in life translated into a friendly, sunshine yellow in 2011. In 2012, our renewed confidence built a world of possibilities. Red was the color that clearly expressed this. The indigo blue of 2013 underlines the idea of networks and dialogue, a greater understanding, and the importance of worldwide connections. By looking afresh at what's coming in 2014, we can unlock the potential that surrounds us. Teal green is chosen for its versatility and universal appeal. And so the story continues. Let's see what 2015 will bring.
Thank you. Okay, revenue and demand creation sounds quite straightforward. But the point I like to make here is that I think marketing now is a revenue and profit center. Shia was saying CMOs and marketers need to understand more than just brand and communications. They need to get down, understand that what they're doing really is the main contributor to the bottom line of the company. They need to get into margins. They need to get into understanding what their role is in terms of what part they play in terms of the company's P&L. Now, marketing was traditionally considered to be a kind of expense center because all the big bucks sit there, right? All the advertising bucks. Yeah, fine. But the shift is moving in the other direction. You spend that, you're getting more accountable for what you spend, okay? You're also looking at market share, and I think that's predominantly the function of the marketer, right? I mean, eventually, why are you there? You're there to increase market share. You're not there to, yeah, true, you're there to increase top of mind, consideration, and recall, and all that soft stuff. But eventually, you need to increase market share because that's what's going to get your company achieving its goals. And when I say demand pull to bridge sales targets versus share targets versus sales projections, yeah, the last slide, okay. I'm saying sales will tell you this is how much I can put on the shelf. You're telling sales at meetings which are now interfunctional. You're sitting at meetings, sales, operations, finance are sitting at meetings. Marketing is no more sitting in isolation. Yeah, but this is our market share goal. This is our assessment of the market. We need to go this much and more. That is what actually the market, we need demand and equity creation to pull your brand through that gap, okay, to ensure that there is brand switch, to ensure new products move into the hands you want it to move. That's the challenge, and that's why I'm saying it's revenue and demand creation, which is absolutely essential. Okay, if you can see now what's happening, that role, that isolated role or so-called hallowed role of marketing is now you're working with finance, you're working with factory, you're working with operations, you're working with IT, okay, as you can see. So what next? Functional integration, right? No more can that CMO work in isolation, right? He's obviously working very, very closely with sales. You're working extremely closely with IT because, I mean, you have this repository of data with you. Someone has to give you the system. Someone has to run the ERP system in order for you to mine this data. Someone has, how are you going to do it? Without IT, you can't do it. So your IT guy logistics, accurate forecast. They're saying they want to keep inventories minimal. Can you get your market sizing correct? Can you ensure that you're going to get these numbers? Because I'm ordering product in, the warehouses are going to get full. Back to you, the CMO is in the thick of things. Obviously, finance, margins, pricing, all that is coming in. So the CMO is really, really with digital, and that's why I said some of these things it could be consequence of how things are moving. But fragmentation of media, I is something that has really come with this digital revolution. It's really fragvergence, as I was reading somewhere. Fragmentation and convergence at the same time. Media is fragmenting, but you're having 4 screens at the same time. Media is also converting. Media devices are converting. So fragvergence. Big dilemmas here. Yeah, all of us are at different stages. I mean, FMCG here is at different stage. I mean, we've all faced. We are going into this vast ocean of digital. You know, it's all big out there. You know, we're going in. And some of the discussions we've been having. How do we get in? If you're not in here, you have to be there. You know, but then the quality of stuff, we're talking how much of our budgets do we spend on social media? What is the ROI on communications? How do we measure it? Okay. The influence of mobile devices on our communication strategy. There's another screen competing with us now. Okay, but how do you tackle that? Okay. How do you treat, can your agencies that have been doing your creative for TV, radio, press over the years, deliver what you want for digital? Question. Is the creative content going to be the same? Question. How are you going to do it? How are you going to measure all this? Okay, so those are all challenges, and I think there's a huge challenge here. Comes with that the capability of the CMO and his team how do I balance capability? How do I balance? I have to up my knowledge levels personally, right? The team has to up their knowledge levels, skill levels have to change. If not, this is not going to work. Okay? Just giving you some quick, because I don't have too much time. This is some of the CRM stuff that we've done on a B2B level. I know we've talked a lot about FMCG on B2B. I'd like to just share it with you. For example, I want a color for my car. Yeah. Ford Festiva beige. 5 colors, I get immediate laser punch. There are different variants. I can see the colors. I can flash a torchlight digitally through them, see the metallic effects that I have. Okay, so you can see the metallic orientation. Look at this one. It comes in, the damage site is entered, what you're going to do, what the repair is, when, what process it's going to take through, date, your customer, you if you're a customer, and the garage owner now, or the workshop owner now can see that thing right across the progression of work. Okay, fantastic stuff. E-benchmarking, you can compare what's happening in the industry versus what you're doing. Paint, labor costs, paint usage, all compared vis-a-vis industry. I mean, this is all tools that you can get in. I can think, and you have the courage to. You need a hell of a lot of courage to do it. Do you have the courage? And what type of? I'm talking. ExxonMobil moved away from things like basic philosophy. If it's safe, don't do it. Right? We moved away from businesses. I'm talking, say, wood preservatives. Huge market out there, but we just moved away. Slap bang. Closed the door on it. Why? Because there was a safety concern, and not only because of the type of termite repellents used in it, right? What is our commitment to moving into water-based technology in paints? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's more expensive, but ExxonMobil is moving into even painting your cars using water-based paint. You wouldn't have that smelly, but there's a huge commitment. You may call it eccentric, you may call it over-enthusiastic, but all in all, it's a commitment that you have to make. It's great to leave behind a positive carbon footprint. Okay, I think that should stand right at the epicenter of the soul of the CMO.
working very, very closely with different parts of the organization and therefore has that really strong role of an integrator. So if one were to really look at a corporate boardroom today, the business. So CSR is no longer just about going and doing a few charitable events or engaging in activities of those sorts, but really integrating that. And you had a great example of how your company is responding to a national need and designing a product and introducing that into the market based on what the country needs and not only a consumer need. But at the heart of it is, of course, the consumer and really how the consumer is evolving, the consumer is getting more empowered, the consumer is getting more connected, and the consumer has many more choices. The consumer is expressing more, is looking at different things, and at the same time has a lot more information available to him or her consumer. And it'll be just interesting, therefore, to now widen the discussion a little bit, and that's where Jhumka So over to you, Jhumka, in terms of when you're looking at it from the other side of the table, where you're partnering a marketing function and a CMO, how do you see the role of the CMO evolving and in the way they're engaging with you and with the market?
I really like what Shia said that a CMO is not marketing a product anymore. He is responsible for the business overall. So when it comes to the business performance, goes without saying, he's going to be responsible for driving ROI, right? And when it comes to driving media investment is the main contributor when it comes to ROI generation. So uh, the relationship between a CMO and the so-called media agency, it has evolved a lot. I don't remember 10 years back if a CMO used to sit for any CMO, I don't remember if a CMO used to sit for any media review presentation or launch presentation. But today, if you see that the interaction between the agency and the CMO, it has become really, really important. It is an integral part of the relationship which an agency is sharing with their clients. Uh, the way the role of the CMO has evolved goes without saying. Our relationship has also changed. It's no more a client agency relationship. It's more of a trusted partner relationship. Uh, in last 5 years, I think each and every media agency working on clients like Unilever, GSK, Etisalat over here, or any other clients, we have visibility to their database in terms of the data which you have talked about, Graham. We get exposure to that data, and that comes from the fact that today a media agency has become a trusted partner to the business, right? And it has changed for sure, and it has changed for the good. Let me tell you that. And media doesn't work in isolation anymore. The way a creative agency people in terms of developing the content, media is equally equally important in planning that communication. Consumerism, the core, goes without saying, consumer will change. I'm sure all of us will agree to that. And the most important thing is just because today media agency has exposure, and that has happened because business is changing, and I don't plan for TV anymore. I plan for the consumer who's evolving. It has really helped the business to grow, and I'm sure going forward also we are going to continue the way things are changing, and all of us, I'm sure, we are going to adapt ourselves and work towards that.
So are CMOs depending more on you to learn about changing media habits and what the consumer is really consuming in terms of media, and are they looking at you for those answers?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And so, as I'm saying, media plan is not an Excel plan anymore. I think today, when we go for any kind of presentation, whether it's a launch presentation of a brand or maybe an annual plan, I think the nuts and bolts of the plan is the last stage, setting the context, because consumer is changing and media environment has changed drastically over last couple of years. Uh, due to fragmentation is a big concern for all of us. So for the CMO, it's extremely important to know what is happening in the market. It's all about the media environment. He wants to know, he wants to know what competition is doing, because maybe I'm not going to shadow competition all this, but that's the scenario which is there for him to know. And I think that is another area of really, really uh, for him uh, for him to know exactly what is going to also. Uh, it's a trend which is going to tell him how he needs to uh, uh, how he needs to position his brand, because all these things at the end of the day is going to help him in picking around the strategy which he
Thanks. So, in whilst these are the changing times and the landscape is evolving and changing, uh, at the end of the day, the marketer's role is still to create demand for his product or her product and really get the consumer and get the consumer engaged. And Shia, you spoke about the fact that today the consumer or the shopper is not deciding on a purchase that he or she wants to make at home and is going and acquiring that product, but they're browsing much more. They're looking at different things, and really point of purchase has become a critical area for people to really make those decisions. And as another FMCG player, I know how critical that is. And as digital evolves now, that's becoming an even bigger space where you've got this whole range of consumers who are just going and buying everything online and are really not looking at this. So, Bim, I'll get you in on this, that whilst all the changes that are happening in the market,
is that the marketers will have to convey like repute partners about the changing landscape. I think that's the starting point. Because even though we agree, at least in this forum, we agree on the changes on the landscape, it's a fact, and with due respect, we know that most of the CEOs out there are not from a marketing background. That's the starting point. So in that sense, the marketers will have to convince the boards about the changing consumer behavior, about the new emerging media, as well as the multiple channels and touch points. And they have to convince that the entire organization will have to change to respond to this consumer behavior, as well as to develop company-wide capabilities to deal with these multiple channels. And that's the starting point. And then firstly, I think CMOs have to be much more accountable than ever before. I think that's one of the fundamentals. They will have to demonstrate their effectiveness in campaigning, both online and offline, as well as how they can visibly contribute towards top line, bottom line, as well as market share. I think that's a challenge. And if you can do that, the first challenge is you can get the CFO on board, because the budgets are being stretched because of the fragmented media. And then secondly, I would say that he's the owner of the consumer data. He's sitting on a gold mine, and he has to take the leadership in integrating the traditional market research as well as online market research, as well as the internal databases, your customer databases, your RD data, so that there's a robust MIS system where the entire organization can depend on, and it's quite visible out there for everybody. And you can break the silos and you can work together in identifying the change in consumer behavior.
Thanks. Sorry, I just started reading some of the questions out there. So, whilst yes, and this, we're talking a lot about data, and again, we all know that as we are engaging with the digital medium in particular, even getting consumer data is much easier and much simpler. And you spoke, Graham, a lot about and emphasized about the fact that it's about analytics. It's no longer, and that becomes a core part of the job. So we all know that bankers love data and bankers love crunching numbers. So how does a marketer's job in a bank really respond to this?
First and foremost, I don't know how much marketers love analyzing data and numbers, but yes, bankers do. Just to touch on some of the things Graham was really talking about as well, very interesting. From a banking and service industry point of view, having been in FMCG before as well, I think it becomes even more important. Exactly. Now, you talked about data and how CMOs really need to use data, but actually, if you really look at it, what we really look at from a banking point of view is to develop business intelligence, and that is to convert data into information and thereon to intelligence, and that's something that we are really investing a lot in. And even if you look at us right now, that's a focal point or a prime objective that even we given to IT as part of a joint marketing IT initiative to develop on the BI. Because until you really have that, you don't really understand your customer. Now we do research, of course, traditional research. We do brand equity studies, customer service, mystery customer service, product research, all that. But that is to understand a certain context at a certain point. But if you really look at some of the very important information that we get for the continuous development of business and sustainability of business, is this information we get off our internal databases as well as our digitalization process. If you look at our digital marketing processes, so there's a lot of information coming off all that as well. And why do we all do this as CMOs? Really is to understand, look, how do we grow business? And what is growing business? Customer acquisition, customer retention, loyalty creation through building relationships, stronger relationships. And that's where digitalization really comes into play, and where you convert that intelligence into decision making and take action. And that leads to not only action in terms of your marketing campaigns or your advertising or your communications, it also leads to product development, service improvement, process improvement, from a service marketing point of view, actually, organization point of view. And also, it develops, at the end of it, a stronger relationship, a stronger bond within the organization and its customers. And also, through we found that cross-selling, upselling, as an example, is very weak. And a primary reason for this weakness is that we don't have enough information. Now, the information is actually there. It's in the system somewhere. It's just that we are really not capturing it. And we are not turning that into intelligence. So that's a focal point at the moment where we are really focusing on how do you develop this, improve our customer acquisition, retention, loyalty, and cross-selling, upselling. So all these are some things that we believe are very important. And also it seriously helps our NPD process, of course. And that's why I'd like to go on to the second aspect of digital marketing or digital and social media marketing, where, see, earlier on, a number of presenters were talking about uh, the story of likes. I think Rohan mentioned it, Irfan touched on it, same here. Uh, I hate this concept of likes, especially on Facebook, if I go to Facebook, because everybody is driving likes. And this is something I believe that a lot of us marketers really need to understand. We really need to understand the role of social and digital marketing. And I think this has been misunderstood to some extent. And we find a lot of organizations going after likes. There are organizations with 400,000 likes, fans. But what does that really mean? I mean, to me, this is a debate. I have a very passionate head of department who handles digital marketing. And this is a debate we have every day. We are just about to touch 100,000 likes for us. We've been leading in the banking industry on these fans. But my question continuously is that true leadership? And somebody talked about earlier on, talking about developing ratios, etc., etc. How much of that leads to engagement? Now, that is what we should be driving as marketers. Driving engagement. We need to understand what is the role of traditional media, like you were talking about, the changing context. You were talking about the changing landscape as well. Landscape is certainly changing, but we really need to understand the role of each of those mediums. So, a lot of people in this room, we don't have time to watch TV. We listen to less radio now. We get our news on different ways, not the newspapers. But look at your target markets. Look at your segments that your organization is really operating. You may be in mass. You may not be in a youth segment. Your segment may not have access to smartphones. Yes, we are talking about it. Very important. But you need to develop that 360-degree approach that we have been talking about for so many years. It's not outdated. That's not an outdated concept. So for me, my humble opinion is that marketer needs to understand the role of each of these mediums. How do you balance traditional marketing and contemporary marketing, and thereby identifying the role of digital marketing and adding value to your organization. And that is really to drive engagement. And through that engagement, you're going to really create loyalty, customer loyalty. But it's not a fact of going after likes and just saying that you're very popular, you're the most popular bank or popular hotel or popular whatever. It's about converting that to business. And that's where digital marketing really needs to go to. And that's where I'd also like to touch on. When you say digital, example from a bank or an insurance company or a hotel or whatever, service industry especially, you need to use it as a channel. That's when you're really driving business development. So it's not you're driving engagement, and then you need to go to the next level of driving business through the utilization of digital channels, which are the real alternative channels of the future.
That's important because there is a regulatory framework which keeps evolving as well. And I think it would be good to hear everybody's thoughts on how the marketeers are reacting to changes in regulations and the way the regulatory frameworks are evolving with all these trends. So.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges every organization faces today is they have to protect their brand image and corporate reputation because of the user-generated media content such as blogs as well as chat rooms and so on. I think the main thing is that you have to be very consistent about your brand. You have to build consistent brand identities, corporate identities across multiple media channels as well as multiple sales channels. So I think that's the fundamental part of creating this bond between the consumer. We talk of consumer engagement, but it's a challenge out there because you need to cater to different target audiences. You need to cater to different media you can, of course, you can customize your campaigns to suit the different target audiences, but overall, you should try to maintain a consistent corporate brand identity, because with digital media, anything could happen, and news travel fast. And if something goes wrong, it could become viral and go out of proportion. So you have to, while doing that, you have to keep in mind of the regulatory framework, and that's where you have to be very, very careful in how you manage your brands, or how you manage your corporate identity in the framework within which you operate. Otherwise, you're out there in a glass box, so that whatever you do, if it is not in line, and definitely is going to be highlighted, and there'll be a digital trail which cannot be erased.
So, Ilan, I'll come to you, but yeah, if I can get you into that, given that you belong to the foods industry, where again regulations are an extremely important aspect, and selling across a different country, where again regulations can change. How are your marketeers and how's your CMO specifically, addressing this challenge of the regulatory framework?
Regulatory framework, knowledge base activity. On the regulatory side, you need to know in terms of marketing, demo needs to support. You can't
And you operate in an environment which full of regulation, especially after 2009, a lot of that. So how do you take care whilst making most of the operating trends? How do you operate in this complex regulatory environment that financial services?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Not just banking, formerly being in insurance as well, same story.
Financial services, yeah.
Yeah, overall. See, an example being in banking, we have customer data, which is defined by the central bank. And see, I would say that the same principles apply. What we apply in traditional marketing mediums to digital marketing, what we do, still remains. You need to operate within that framework and make sure that you are adhering to all those regulatory requirements. There's no fundamental real change. Only difference is that when it comes to digitalization, of course, it's much more dynamic. And like you were saying, things can go wrong very fast unless you manage it. So, there's much more customer feedback, much more information flowing all over the place. So you need to be able to manage that process. So I would say that the only difference between traditional to now would be that the complexity. And you need to basically manage that complexity.
Great, thank you. There's an interesting sort of a trend of questions coming here, whereas one which reads, how do you make all levels of staff understand the branding strategy? There's another one which talks about goal congruence is complex due to the short-term KPIs and poor understanding of brand personality and sustainability. How can the CMO change this? There's a third which talks about how can a CMO integrate the value chain, most importantly, all levels of staff to live and deliver the brand promise. So it's a lot around how do you ensure that the engagement within the organization on the brands, and particularly, I think it's also about the integrator role that you were talking about. So it's not just the CMO or the marketing team which owns the brand, it's actually the entire team. So, and then there are various aspects in terms of their KPIs. Yeah. So the supply chain guys at the same time, all of us know in good consumer goods companies will have forecast accuracy as one of their biggest measures, right? And there's always that healthy debate on going in for additional market shares versus forecast accuracy or forecast bias, right? I mean, that's just making it alive on a ground level. So how do you grapple with this in your organizations? And Graham, since you spoke about it, it would be good to get your perspectives first.
Yeah, thanks, Udayan. Yeah, I think a couple of ways. Obviously, the organization culture has to be set up initially, by the CEO, and as far as we're concerned, that is there. Then your measures, you got to look at, again, you're talking short-term KPIs, but short-term KPIs are a result of more longer-term processes, they're outcomes, right? They're a result of something being done. The organization, you've got to start understanding what is leading to those KPIs, right? And as I was saying, the CMO has to work in tandem with IT, with finance, with logistics, and all of them. I mean, I did specify, this is talking specifically about the role of the CMO, CMO understanding more about, and that's what she was saying, taking on a more business role, right? It's why we keep specifying that is because brand and brand building, as it traditionally or is supposed to be, is a little alien from the business role. If you look at logistics, if you look at finance, they're all more business related. They are more I say, backstage, or out, not in the open. But all of the heads, all of the functional leads have to be looking at your corporate KPIs. Eventually, that's what's going to govern what you're going to do, right? Market share is a corporate KPI, which is flowing down to a measurement in the CMO's performance. So undoubtedly, it has to be a joint effort, function integration and leadership at a functional level. The tone set by the CEO of the organization, functional leadership at a functional level down the teams, cascading whatever priorities, what are the short-term KPIs, what are the longer-term KPIs. I mean, that's it's a combination of leadership, communication, and understanding of that fundamentally. Yeah.
So who leads the effort?
See, again, as I said, the effort, it's a part of the organization culture, unquestionably. Because if you don't have that, and the CEO does it, I mean, if the CEO is not doing it, then it's not going to happen. So you got to understand the business, you got to understand what levers are making the business tick. And each functional head, see, again, if the IT guy doesn't know what my needs are in terms of as far as the CMO is concerned, right, he's going to not understand why I'm asking him for some data. Right? If I don't understand why the logistics guy is telling me, give me an accurate forecast, I can tell him you're giving, what does a forecast mean? It's an estimation, but they saying give it me 90% accurate or whatever. He's coming and you got to, at that level, understand what your short-term priorities are and what your longer-term priorities are. You can't, again, it's balance. You can't sacrifice one for the sake of the other,
Okay. Thank you very much. Very clear response in terms of that it's culture, and culture is something which has to be led from the top, and absolutely true. There are some questions here which I'm not going to point at you because there's a passionate consumer of chocolate cream biscuits who has a point of view on Malaban biscuits. Gentleman or lady to engage with Share during tea on that. There's a question here which talks about from the agency perspective or from a trusted partner perspective. Is know from a CMO point of view over on a campaign or initiative?
The most important thing is what is the objective, because there are so many times when after going through the entire round, the question which that told me what you want to achieve at end of it. So the most important thing is, before you start the journey, it's important know your vision. You, where do you start basically? Okay, so it's very interlinked, and yeah. So as I spoke about objective and ambition is equally important. So when we talk about ROI driven plan, goes without saying it's very important for an agency to have a very clear understanding from the CMO that what is his business ambition, and then take the journey forward. So that's it.
Thanks. Bimal, there's a question that is asked to you, which is how do you integrate R&D and marketing to get the best out of your product innovation?
I think, as I said before, so it all revolves around the information, the MIS system you create, because the CMO is part of the information, the market research functions behind innovation is that there has to be a clear system of information where the consumer changes are online or maybe real time, so that everybody in the organization are in sync with the changing consumer behavior, so that everybody understand the need, so that it's not like some time back where you give a brief to the R&D and wait for the feedback, or you wait until R&D stumble upon a new idea. It's about somehow trying to get as at when it happens to get the information on board, so that you can work together with not
And what's the role that IT plays? Just to follow a question in terms of how integrated are they with your marketing folks, and how do they interact and engage with the CMO?
I think IT plays a very, very important role, because you have the RD data, you have external data, and IT is very important. It's a CIO and the CMO has to work together in the organization to create that link between different sources of information, and providing feedback to your sales team as well as R&D and so on. So IT also has a very important role to play in this scenario.
We still have a bit of time, and we can entertain a few questions from the audience.
Good one. By far the best session so far. Excellent presentation, Graham. Finally, there's some rethinking of the rules of branding. You mentioned about being eccentric, killing some of your own existing successful products because you know that that's not the right thing to do. My question to the rest of the panel and maybe to every marketer here: why aren't the Sri Lankan companies adopting that mindset? Are we ready to kill some of our products that we know are not good for the people, and are not good for the future, not good for the environment, not good for health, whatever? When are we going to do that? The rest of the panel.
Well, if I have to go first on it, well, look, I think different organizations have a different evolutionary process, and different organizations would deal with it in different way. But I wouldn't really agree saying that not all organizations do this. Now, if you really look at some multinationals, especially going back to when I was in one many 12, 13, 14 years ago, we used to practice SKU rationalization, brand rationalization, product rationalization. So, you can't be emotional about some of these things. You had to be business oriented. You had to be professional. And it is happening. Yes, I may agree with you saying that not all organizations do practice it. There's a level of emotional connect, especially when you're talking about single owner organizations or, not really the, like I said, it's a evolutionary process. So some of those organizations might not practice it. But of course it is changing, landscape is changing. People are beginning to embrace it a little bit more. But obviously, people talk the talk a little bit more than walking the talk. So, but it is happening, I would say.
I think really if you're going to be in the marketplace, you can't just keep on adding products if you don't take it away. And if companies are not taking away products, that probably means they're also not adding much into the market. Because today, innovation is really critical to be out there, because the younger generation especially, they want new things all the time. And as I said, the product life cycle of a lot of products is very short. And I don't see any company really putting something out into the market unless they're making money on it. So
there's a related question which is interesting, which talks about you're giving an example of AkzoNobel exiting a particular category, but there would be other competitors who would want to make the most of it. So how do you balance, and where do you draw the line on the sand? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, again, I think it's a moral decision. We talked about regulation. Regulation comes from within. I mean, there could be regulation, so I'm answering from different perspectives. There could be some things you're forced to do. There could be some things that you think you may want to do. For example, we moved out of using heavy metals in our products 15 years ago. Regulation is just coming, awareness is just coming in. But we thought of it 15 years ago. It made our products more expensive. Nonetheless, we did it. Okay, so there are other facets of the brand that could support the premium, that could support the value. So I think speaking for ourselves, it's a moral decision. As I said, it takes a lot of courage. It takes the organization, it takes the culture to do it. I mean, the organization culture that drives it and the leadership. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a decision. I mean, no one is saying don't do it. I mean, and no consumer is going to come and say, I'm not going to use it, because they are using products which it's not going to kill you immediately, or it's not going to, it's something that we feel is not 100% user friendly. So again, moral decision. It's if someone wants to use it to their advantage, fine. But again, I think we just go back to, we're talking about brand purpose, we're talking about where we come from. You just look at a genetic code, look at a vision, and move on. I mean, there's much more to it in the business and the brand than just getting, yeah. So that's how I look at it.
Thanks. Do we have any other? I think you have any questions? No? So whilst we have the audience thinking of some more questions, there's a question here which talks about the effects of brand awareness in the country where it's manufactured and the country where the brand originates. So the fact that you could have global brands that could be manufactured in one country and could have originated from the other. I'm not very clear on what the question is. So the person who sent this question, would you please stand up and explain your question, please? Yeah, thank you.
For example, Unilever has their manufacturing plants in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, and various other countries. But Unilever is a Dutch brand. So generally, in personal care products, brands like L'Oreal, they have the reputed name as a French brand, launched in Paris, but manufactured in China. So this has created a problem for local companies like 100% Sri Lankan manufacturers who competes in the global market, trying to gain a global market presence. So, for example, I think even Munchie exports to a lot of countries in the world. But then again, when the aspect it comes to where it is manufactured, and when it comes to know that it's from Sri Lanka, uh, Sri Lanka is known as a third world country, so it affects the brand awareness and the image of the brand. So how would a country like Sri Lanka tackle a problem like this in the international arena?
Sorry? No, I think the question was more on how do you tackle the aspect of having a Sri Lankan brand selling globally. Is that your question, sir?
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Well, in our case, I mean, what you say, it is true. It are manufactured right, I mean, possibly every country. And definitely coming from a developing country is a disadvantage. I would say there are two aspects to it. First of all, in countries where we don't actually get involved in distribution, where we have distributors, being a market leader in the country of origin helps because they build some trust. Our experiences in countries where where we tend to uh, have a ongoing distribution and marketing is that if you can meet the expectations of the consumers, and in a lot of the overseas markets that we do operate, we don't have the level of marketing input that we do in Sri Lanka. So it's really customers are buying it and repurchasing it because they like the product. So if you can get over the hurdle, and in our experience, not many customers really look at the point of origin. If you get your packaging right, and you have a product that is acceptable to the market, and you deliver what you promise, you can get over that hurdle. But in saying that, there is some negativity also coming in. But I think today, largely, people are expecting products to be made all over the world. I mean, when you buy a multinational, if you take Coke, Coke is manufactured in so many countries. And I think that bias is probably getting less, I would imagine.
Bimal, would you want to add a perspective on that?
I think definitely, as Shia mentioned, as we go forward, I think the fact that he mentioned that we are a third world country, we are not a third world country anymore, so that there's a lot of growth happening out there. And as we go forward, I think there'll be a lot of brand building about Sri Lanka, and it would probably help to take local brands further to the global arena. So I don't think it's a major issue out there as long as Shia mentioned, if your product is right, if your packaging is right, and if you stick to your quality and customer service, I think that's the most important thing.
No, so I had a similar experience at home recently where my wife was very upset because she bought this really exquisite top of the line Swiss chocolates, and it said handmade Swiss chocolates, and behind the box it said made in China. So I mean, I had some hell to pay for that. That box of chocolates didn't go down very well. I basically just told her, no, the box is made in China. The chocolates have come from Switzerland. But yeah, since you raised the point on Unilever, yes, we believe that our brands are something that are intimate and are close to consumers in the respective markets. And a lot of our brands are not something that have evolved either from the Netherlands, like you said, we are Dutch, or from the UK, and we're actually an Anglo-Dutch company, but have really evolved based on what the consumers' needs are. And our experience also says that exactly the point that Shea you mentioned, and Vimal you also reiterated, that ultimately consumers are looking for a promise that a particular product or a brand has, and whether you're delivering to that. So, and I think that starts from the point of sale in terms of where your brand is placed. Uh, and if I were to think of Sri Lanka, I think in terms of there are certain industries, whether it's tea, whether it's garments, where it's like a foregone conclusion that what comes out of Sri Lanka would be top quality, and I don't think so. So there again, I think the lines are blurring today increasingly. I don't think people are just going to go and buy a French personal care product because it's from France, or go and just buy Swiss chocolates because they're from Switzerland, right? So even though they're made in China, yeah. We have space for about 2 more questions in case, or any observations if anybody has any.
Hi, I do have one question to the panel. Just interestingly, just as observation, I think culturally, we sometimes grow up in a culture that's fear of failure. So when it comes to the workplace and innovation, how important is it, or how can you balance this thought of taking risks and calculated risks? Because if you do open it up to a point where you say, like VW does, it allows the consumers to design their cars, and us being risky enough to design our products. Just interested to know, thinking on how you can balance that out, inculcate that culture of it's okay to fail. You don't necessarily have to. It might be worth just thinking about new products. And in that thought process might go to a new place in how you think of traditional marketing. How important is this on a day-to-day workplace?
Well, I think any company really to go forward, that there is always risk. I mean, nothing is given for sure. But it also has to be a very calculated risk. You go into new ventures, new products, new areas. You have to have some understanding of what you're doing. You can't suddenly think, this looks interesting. Why don't we just do it and see if it works? I think in today's context, you can't do that. But if you have a business case, you've done your homework, and sometimes there is something called a gut feeling as well, that but you have to substantiate that with some sort of evidence. I think that is the kind of place that most organizations want to be. You have to take risks. Everybody has to take risks, otherwise you can't grow. But it has to be one that is a researched risk.
Great.
Also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a component of your question was to talk about the culture of not taking risks and people. I, for one, believe that that's changing now. And if you look at the change in culture, the various influences that we have, the exposure that we have, international exposure, all that, things are changing. And I happen to work with kids on lecturing front, etc., on marketing, things like that. If you really talk to a lot of these 19, 20, 21-year-olds, up to 23-year-olds who come for marketing lecture, and you ask them, why are you doing marketing? Half of them say it's because they didn't understand numbers, finance, they couldn't do that. But some of them are really now talking, saying, I want to do something. I want to do something different. And some of them, much more than earlier, I would say, going back 7, 8 years, today, people are talking about doing their own thing, their own venture. Now that is a very important indicator, I believe, to say that people are now starting to take risks when you yourself is going into a business. So that's a small change, I don't know, I see in kids today versus 10, 20 years ago.
So there's a question which is actually more appropriate for CFOs, and I think it's a question which many marketers have. It says, if market share is a corporate KPI, why is the CFO generally anti-marketing? So I'm not sure if anybody on the panel wants to answer this question, or do we have a CFO in the audience? It'd be interesting to get that perspective in. Yeah, so in a room full of marketers, I don't think a CFO is now going to go and admit that he is one or she is one, right?
Again, I don't know, but CFOs are not always against marketers. I personally started my career in finance. So I've always had this advantage, I believe, in organizations. Even now in my current organization, 2 or 3 of the closest colleagues I have is one is a CFO, other one is a CIO for some weird reason. But you got to be able to talk their language. Sometimes the problem is that us marketers get carried away and we just keep talking about market share at any cost. sales at any cost, right? Growth at any cost, which are not sustainable. So as soon as you as a marketer also learns a CFO's language and learns a language of business, and why are we all in business? We need to develop sustainable businesses. If you start changing your language, you will suddenly find that they're going to be much more reactive to you in a positive way.
See, I think taking on from what Tilan said, I think CFO, no doubt, we view him as, or has been viewed as a controller, but if you start talking similar languages and if you find equilibrium, if you find mindsets meeting, he's obviously, the modern CFO is a facilitator. I mean, it's very simple as that. He's going to help you along. He's going to say, look at this, why don't you look at this? And that's where he's going to, you need the IT coming in, the data coming in. He's going to help you crunch your numbers, whilst, he's also understanding what you require. So I would say, think of him more as a facilitator than a controller. You get away a problem.
Absolutely, and I think as the functions are evolving, so is the finance function. So the finance function's role in a lot of organizations today is not just limited to being that of a controller. In fact, increasingly the controller function is going to go down, and the way we look at it, we find that in the next 10 years you might have the controller role just eliminated because of technology just taking over and information being available at fingertips. So with that, whilst there are many other questions, and I would invite you to engage with the panelists over a cup of tea as we break. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking your time out and sharing your perspectives on the changing role of the CMO. Your rich experience and how you brought it out just made it fascinating for us. So thank you once again, and over to you, Lakshman.
Okay, the message is very clear. Okay, there is so much of demands coming due to the changes in the context and the enterprise. There are so many challenges enterprises are facing, and therefore the enterprise expectations of CMO's role is changing. And thank you so much for bringing that perspective, Shia. And these 4 pillars or 5 pillars of CMO's role, I believe they are equally important, all that you cannot ignore any of these things, and that enlightening presentation. So you cannot forget the data, you cannot forget the functional integration, you cannot forget the fragmentation, or something else to say. So thank you so much for your presentation, and Jumka bringing the service providers perspectives, and Bimal, and again 2 CEOs, Bimal CEO with a very strong marketing background, and veteran marketeer, Tilan bringing in his perspectives. And thank you so much for Udayan moderating this session. We are moving on to the final session. Before that, we will take a very short 15 minutes break, and please be back by 3:45. And please join me thanking our panel.
Platinum sponsor.
We see them all every day. He wants a new smartphone. Just can't choose which one. That's where we come in. Uh-oh. Oh, look at her. I don't think she's leaving anytime soon. She came in with a problem, and she's leaving with the perfect solution. Who do we have here? Hi there. Come on in. Look around, bring your friends, maybe pay some bills. Discover new things, or just try something different. We learn, laugh, and play together every day, and we love it. Welcome to Etisalat, a part of your life every day of the year. Etisalat, it's about you.
Gold sponsor.